Well, good morning. It's good to be with you on this Friday morning as we continue together in our time in Luke. We are in Luke 15 still, and as we've been in Luke 15, we have been focusing on Luke 15 is this chapter of lost things. We've talked about lost sheep and what that looks like. We've talked about a lost coin yesterday, but today we're going to talk about a lost brother. And this is the parable that's often called the prodigal son. And we're going to see the prodigal's lostness. But I want you to understand the prodigal son, when we read it, the story of the lost brother, it's not just one brother who is lost, who doesn't understand the depth of the father's love, but we're going to see in this parable there are two brothers who don't understand the father's love. So I don't know how, I don't, I, I like to take about 10 minutes and I have a little clock actually running on my computer that's recording this. So we may split this up into two, depending how much I ramble. But we're going to look at the story of the prodigal or the lost brother, and I'd like to focus on the younger son, and then look at the older son. And like I said, we may split this into two rooteds just based on how long I ramble today. So let's look at Luke 15, verses 11 through the end of the chapter, 11 to 32. And Jesus said, there was a man who had two sons. The younger said to his father, Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me. So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all that he had and traveled to a distant country where he squandered his property in desolate living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would have gladly have filled himself with the pods the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough to spare? But here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands. So he set off and went to his father. While he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his slaves, Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it. Let us eat and celebrate. For the son of mine that was dead is alive again. He was lost and is found. They began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and was approaching the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, Your brother has come. Your father has killed the fatted calf because he got him back safe and sound. Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you. I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have not even once given me a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him. And the father said to him, Son, you're always with me, and all that is mine is yours. We had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead, has come to life. He was lost and is found. So, this is maybe the greatest story in Scripture. Um, to many of us, there's a lot to unpack here. I want to talk about just before we dive into the characters. I want to talk about some things in the text, some things that you're going to see in the text that I think are interesting that will add some insight to your understanding of the text. First, I want to talk about the compassion of the Father. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But I really want you to listen to this. While he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. I don't know how many of you have ever read the classic book by Philip Yancey, The Jesus I Never Knew. Phenomenal book. Or maybe this is What's So Amazing About Grace. Yancey wrote two books back to back I read years ago that are just that in some ways saved my faith, really restored my joy in salvation, and it really helped me understand the depth of God's grace and put me on the path that I'm on now in regards to preaching grace. But Yeah, and Yancey in these two books, What's So Amazing About Grace looks at the depth of God's grace, and then The Jesus I Never Knew actually looks at what Scripture tells us about who Jesus is. Not what we think or what we've been told, what does the Bible actually say? And in one of those books, he tells the story of reading this passage to a group of Middle Eastern men. Because if you've never been to the Holy Land or are unfamiliar with that culture, the Holy Land is a place where the culture of Jesus' day is still fairly common. They kept the culture of Jesus' day fairly consistent. So you're going to find a lot of the same cultural things that there now that you would have found in Jesus' day. And Yancey asked the men who are reading the text, said, what jumps out to you when you read this passage? And all of them, to a man, said the fact that the Father ran to the Son. In that culture, it's embarrassing to run. Men don't run. Men do not run. Running is for children, but men do not run. And so they were all taken aback by this because um, it's embarrassing. And that is how the Father embarrasses himself with his love for us. His love for us is literally embarrassing. It's almost shameful how deeply he loves us, how deeply he loves us. I just think that's always interesting to think of just how deep and how great the Father's love for us that he runs to the Son. That's one thing. I did want to look at the story, the old part of the older brother, and I think what I'm gonna finish this, and then Monday we'll look deeper at each of the sons. We'll look deeper at the sons. But I like what the way the older brother says. Listen, for all these years, uh, I worked like a slave. I've never disobeyed a command. But when this son of yours comes back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you kill the fatted calf. And the father says, son, you're always with me. We celebrate because this brother of yours was dead. He's come to life. He is dead. He was lost and now found. So do you see that the older brother almost wagging his finger, this son of yours, this is your son. He's destroyed everything and taken what should be mine and shamed your name. And this son of yours has done this. And you dare to give him the fatted calf, this son of yours. And what's the father do? He says, listen, I love you. All that I have is yours. We celebrate because this brother of yours is back. We thought he was dead. Now he's alive. So the father turns the tables. It's not this son of the father, but it's his brother. It's his brother. He's reminding the older brother that this prodigal who has returned, this lost son, is not just some kid who wasted his father's money and has shamed the family name and all this, but he's reminding the son, the older brother, that this brother, this one of your own flesh, is back. He has been found. We need to love the prodigal like the father does, friends. The father loves the prodigal. Hmm. That's the thing with the prodigal son is, for me honest, most of us in the church are more like the older brother than we are the prodigal. You know, we aren't real sure we want God to love those folk because we don't always love those folks. So we're not sure we want God to love those folk. Whoever those folk are, maybe those folk are folks who are out there living lost and folk that don't share your politics or share your perspective. And we don't really care for them, so we don't really think the Father should either. But the Father calls us to remember that no, 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 this is not just my son, but this is your brother. The Father reminds us that it isn't just the job of the Father to love the prodigal, but it's the job of the older brother to love the prodigal. And that can be hard because prodigals are messy. Prodigals have problems. They're prodigals for a reason. But that's our call, particularly those of us who have been in the church for a while and been around Jesus for a while. Our job is to love the prodigal, to understand that I probably got more in common with the older brother than I do the prodigal a lot of days. And I have to love the prodigal because the father loves the prodigal. And the prodigal is my brother or my sister. So, well, Monday we'll look deeper at each of the individuals in the text and talk a little bit more about that. But I want you to see some big picture stuff in the story of the prodigal son. Hey, thanks for being with us. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back Monday.